Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. Thank you once again for joining me in this program that's broadcast live from Channel 9, and this will of course be rebroadcast on Channel 6 on Sunday evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Last week I did indicate that we'd be to mark Cancer Awareness Month, that we'll have a team to speak on the question of cancer, owing to the unavailability of some of the persons doing some work in the hinterland. The team has not been able to assemble, but for this evening we'll deal with a team with hinterland connections from a different angle, and that's the domestic airline operations and in particular safety. My guests on the program, to my extreme left, Captain Gerry Gouveia. Next to Captain Gouveia, Captain Larry Barclay, and the ubiquitous and evergreen Major General Norman McLean on the extreme left. Gentlemen, welcome to Plain Talk. I always apologize when I have an all-male team. I like better diversity in our programs. But before I get into our questions, you started today what's called a business summit, I think it's called.
Yes.
I wonder if we can spend a few minutes talking about it, because it's very topical. I believe it continues tomorrow as well.
Yes. Myself and General McLean spent the entire day at that summit, and it's actually a very, very useful summit. And it was quite interesting because we heard the chairman of the Private Sector Commission calling the president to clarify government's approach to economic development, taxation policy, incentive programs for businesses, fostering and enhancing investor confidence, democracy, rule of law, and so on. And then we heard the president address, and he called on the private sector businesses to join government in trying to help to provide the good life, and also inform the private sector that they are rebalancing the economy. So the private sector is very interested to understand how and the methodology and what in fact we are achieving by the rebalancing. But the private sector made a very strong commitment to work with the government of the day, and but we saw a lot of presentations on issues, on a whole range of issues, and I will speak to some of those issues today. But there were issues of markets. There were issues, for example, of our tourism markets suffering because we have not developed a national marketing program to market Guyana. Then we dealt with issues of human resources and human development, which Norman will speak to. But it was actually quite an interesting development, and I think you're on tomorrow, Chris.
Yes,
just before lunch.
Just for 5 minutes. I think just for 5 minutes.
No, don't worry, the 5 minutes. It comes in sometimes 15 minutes or more.
No. Right? Now, tell me something. What's your understanding? What's the private sector's understanding of the good life? Is it just sloganeering? What does it translate to?
The good life?
Yeah. No, seriously.
On a very serious note, I was actually told that if you want the good life, you have to pay for it. And so we saw a number of increased taxes and so on. So that to achieve the good life, you have to. It is not something that will just come out of the blue. Is that people will have to work harder. They'll have to put their shoulder to the wheel. They'll have to pay more taxes. And we saw that. The good thing we just been told is that next year, or this year, for example, for the 2018 budget, there will be no new taxes. And Norman McLean made the comment today that maybe we don't have any new taxes because everything has been taxed.
Well, let Major General speak for himself.
No, but I said that, I said I was told by somebody when they saw the statement by the Minister of Finance that there will be no new taxes in this upcoming year. And somebody said, well, the reason is that everything has been taxed already.
But I go back to this question: what is the good life as a national policy?
Has it been defined, or has it been just stated that this is the objective, the good life? What does the good life mean? I don't know that it's been said. I can only assume that the good life means that you have a job, you're earning enough, and that life for you is improving, and that sort of thing.
Well, you have within the next couple of months within about 10 weeks, you can get about 8 to 10,000 people moving off from employment to unemployment. How do you fit that in under this broad label of the good life?
Well, for me, I think my understanding of the good life.
You're not allowing me, Major.
No, but I wanted
No.
we spoke about it today, but when we spoke about human resources, we spoke about developing the human resources. What we didn't talk about as well is also how do we keep them? How do we keep them again? And keeping them means that we want them to have good jobs, we want them to be able to take care of their families, buy a car, buy a house, travel, and that is the good life for me. That is the good life where people from all walks of life could really share in the resources of Guyana.
Yes.
What kind of time frame we have for that? And Larry, you can
If
comment.
if I might
No, no,
add on the issue of
Well,
of
tell
the
me about
persons
security.
going
Tell
going
me
going
about
on the
security,
going
for
on
example.
bread line, I think sometimes we have to balance things, and sometimes it's important for the entire country to have the good life. That certain areas where they may not have been operating efficiently as before, and that may not have been contributing, and that may be draining in some ways, that those areas changes will have to be made. Sometimes
So
changes
fire
for
them,
the better.
Fire them, put them,
Sometimes
put them on the
changes.
bread line. Are you
Sometimes changes for the
serious?
better
Are you
are.
speaking for the private sector when you say that?
Sometimes no, I'm not. I'm
Well, I
not,
hope
sir.
not.
I'm speaking in
I
my
hope
personal
not.
capacity.
Oh, good.
Sometimes changes are a little difficult and require some stress.
but
But at
shouldn't-
the end of the day, the end justifies the means.
And how
But
long
they-
is the end of the day?
And how long is the end? That is the issue. How
No,
long
no,
is
no,
the
you
end?
tell us.
I don't know.
You
I
said-
don't
you
know
said
at this
that
point. I have no idea at this point.
Norman?
Time
Because
frame?
we-
You're looking for time frame?
We're talking about, apart from, you did mention security, which is one of the major problems. Insecurity is a major problem in this country. Economic insecurity, insecurity from crime, bandits invading your home.
But if you accept the records which the police have declared, is that crime has gone down by what?
19%.
19% or something like that.
Total, yeah.
Some people, when we
You know-
challenged it, said, well, a lot of people get robbed and their cell phone is gone and they don't see any point in reporting it because nothing will happen. So they are saying that there is less reporting
Who is saying that?
of
Who is
crime.
this they?
The public generally.
No, it must be
The
somebody
public,
who's
the
saying.
public, the public generally. That is the public.
The members
view.
of the public are saying, look, crime is our number one issue. That's what they're saying.
I
And-
believe
you-
it's an issue of confidence in the police force. I think the confidence has been growing over the last couple of years, and I think particularly in the last 6 months, with that commission of inquiry, I believe there's been also
Which
a
commission of inquiry? You're not serious. Not the Paul Slow Commission of Inquiry you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes,
So I think that
absolutely.
inquiry also
That
rocked.
is one of the most misconceived commissions of inquiry we've
The
had
point
in
is,
this
the
country.
point is, it rocked confidence in the police force, and I think what we need to do now is work to restore the confidence in the police force. We've got to have confidence in our police force. The police force is the only line between us and anarchy, and it's important that we build confidence in our police and our police force. And I certainly don't subscribe to the fact that all the police force is bad. I actually accept the numbers from the Guyana police force that
Yes.
crime has been going down. But I believe that what is happening is that the PR campaign, I think there's a very, and Kit Nascimento constantly talk to the police about their issue of their public communication strategy, which I don't believe is really sending the message over correctly. But I accept, and I don't believe the police will lie to the
Fudging
nation.
figures
No,
and
I
all
don't
that.
think so.
No, but what are the figures? And what are the figures?
The figures
No,
are-
just
They're public,
tell-
they're public, they're
No,
public.
hold on.
They're public.
You can't just tell people 19%. 19% in what?
No.
Murders? Hold on, murders?
No,
Home
overall,
invasion?
overall.
Fraud?
No,
No,
only
but
one
surely you have to
area,
disaggregate things.
only really one area that had a significant increase was in robbery, not under arms, robbery using other instruments, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah.
But okay, let's.
So all the rest have declined generally. Other than that,
we're probably reading different newspapers.
no, this is not
no.
newspapers. This is the actual release
No,
from
no,
the police.
No, yeah.
Listing all the crimes starting with murder, all 5 types of robberies, and everything else.
Mr. McLean, but what I'm talking about, Major
Cleaning
General,
up, mister, got rank and smell.
Let me tell you, we're talking. Look at what you read, what you experience. Anyway, back to the summit. What?
I'm glad
Is
you
the-
moved off of this topic.
No, I wish the police would come and defend their own record.
That's not a bad thing to do, I think.
But
That's
they
what they
don't.
need to do. That's
They
what
don't.
need to do.
I
Yeah.
think so. Why?
They just believe in putting out this anonymous or named set
No, well, you
No,
know,
that's not anonymous. It's a
even
police
the
official
vice
set.
president who has responsibility for public security seems to have, over the last month, lambasted them a little bit, saying that, look, they had a bad month. So I think the capture of this chap outside by Weldad or what have you, seemed to give them a little moral boosting, you know. So, the police job is not an easy one.
Nobody was saying that.
Having served
Nobody's saying that.
myself for about 20 years, so.
It hurts me when the police force get a bashing, though, because
Yes,
there are many
yes.
brave policemen and women that are out there risking their lives. Certainly, they have some bad ones, but you know what? It's a work in progress. The security sector reform program by the British.
You can't tell people who are dead it's a work in progress.
Yeah, but Chris, it's not a given
But
nothing
that's
is
a
being
fact
done.
of life,
It's not a given nothing is
The
being
death
done.
is a factor.
Yeah, it is a
All right,
fact of
Security
life.
sector reform program is
Jer-
happening.
Gerry has gone back on this when Mr. McLean wants to move from it. So tell us about the business, the summit.
Thank you. As you know, we had the first day today, and it was a very full and packed day. And I think it went very well myself. The president, after the opening remarks by myself and a welcome, I think the president gave a speech which addressed the issues which we were hoping for. And so I think that started off. We had Sophie, the IDB representative. She spoke. The president, His Excellency David Granger, spoke. And then we had a number of 5 presentations, starting with forestry, and then manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and then yours truly spoke on the extractive sector. And then the final thing was by Nicholas Boyer, who spoke on commerce. So it was 6 presentations. And it went much longer than we thought it should take, but it served its purpose. People listened, people posed questions, people raised issues, and so we had a very good set of presentations. Following that, we had the parliamentary opposition representatives, 2 who spoke, and that went very well itself. That was led by not Nicholas.
Gail. Give the sheriff.
Gail spoke,
Right, and
but
Bishop Hedges.
and Bishop Edgell spoke.
Mhm.
So it went very well, I thought.
The report one has seen is that the chairman of the private sector posed a number of questions and issues. Did they
A message was read by
Yes.
by
Yes.
It was more than
Indar.
my impression is much more than message.
Correct.
A number of issues were raised.
Yeah, oh yes,
Serious,
oh
grave
yes,
issues were raised.
Yes,
Did you get the sense that whether it's the president or other representatives from the government responded to those issues?
Well, I don't think that it is. You can say that he responded to it. This was a message before the president spoke.
Yes.
Am I right? Yes.
And the president came with a prepared
That's why he
speech.
should be able to
That's
respond.
right.
That's why
No,
he should be able to.
he
President
didn't have
gave
it
a prepared
before.
speech.
Yeah. But you always adapt your speech for the issues you raise. Anyway, so the question though, Major, is whether, Major General, whether the issues were addressed by, well, forget the president, anyone else?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. I think
I
tomorrow.
think we'll see that tomorrow.
Chris, let me tell you what is happening here. There's a failure of the institutional architecture for private sector, public sector engagement. The IDB in 2006 had paid for and developed the competitive strategy, which allowed the public and the private sector to talk and then take that decision to a council where decisions were taken. What's happening now is that there's no such institutional arrangements. And so if you talk to a minister, the conversation stays with that minister. And it don't flow into government policy, other than if that minister is a very proactive man at cabinet to try to move the agenda forward. So what we are hoping to come out of this is a re-emergence of the IDB competitive strategy to put meaning to public-private sector engagement, and so that the decisions taken, the conversations at this conference, could then go into such a system and then end up at the council chaired by the president, where decisions could now be taken coming out of this conference.
Before we get to the meat and the substance, why is it that the IDB, we have to rely on the IDB to do this for us, to bring our government and our people and the business
I don't
community
think
together?
that is quite right, you know. IDB has funded this.
Yeah.
But,
But
this is our
Captain
initiative.
Gouveia is going back and said, look, IDB had done this and done that, and doing this again.
Well, IDB did it in 2006,
And
and the reason they did it actually was a pilot program in Guyana. It was an amazing program where they brought in the consultants, they developed the clusters in manufacturing and tourism, and we sat down for close to a year talking in these clusters, and then we went to the PPDs, the public-private dialogue groups, which then went to a secretariat, developed the agenda for the National Council, chaired by the president, and so decisions could have been taken.
And what happened with that initiative?
And it worked. It worked. And it was working until I think when the low carbon development strategy came in. I would be the first one to say I believe that President Jagdeo kind of lost focus on it a little bit, because he saw the low carbon development, the $250 million from the low carbon development strategy, and the consultation that was required by the Norwegians for that was very, very intensive. And so he got distracted. When Donna Ramatar came into office, that period was a very difficult period for him. I don't think he got time to focus back on it. And now, of course, with this new government, they have kind of shelved it, because I don't know why they did it, because this is an IDB program. It wasn't a political institutional arrangement. It was an IDB paid-for program that would make the private sector and the public sector work together and then bring that discussion to a decision-making forum, which is not happening at the moment.
I know it brought a lot of confidence as between the private sector commission and the government. So much so, and I said that today in my speech, so much so that when the new government came, we were being accused of being in bed with the PVPC because we seemed to be too close to them, and we were, adopting some of the policies. But the policies were adopted by a national consultation. You see?
Yeah.
So, what happened after 2015? What did the new administration do?
Actually, the Minister of Business started to develop a new methodology or a new system to try to foster this enhanced work between the public and the private sector. It is still a work in progress, but the only problem is none of this connects back to the president. None of this connects to a national council. And really and truly, you need all of this consultation to go back to a council where decisions could be taken. But I know the Minister of Business is in fact working. He's working on a system to try to bring something similar to it, but it's still a work in progress.
But you're talking now 2.5 years. The economy has slowed. Everybody has agreed that.
Even that, the chairman of the proceedings today, Mr. Ramesh Prasad, stated that, look, the first summit was in 1999. From 1992, it took 7 years. And now, this time, it's 2.5 years, so please.
Yeah, but this time, it's the private sector who called it.
Yes.
So are you saying the private sector took 2.5 years to call us, to convene us?
Yes, because the president, early in his appointment, I think in the June after the elections,
Yes, we met him.
we met with him, and he called on us to do this, and it's taken us 2.5 years.
Now, you would be aware that you mentioned forestry in the extractive sector.
Yes.
The president, in a presentation in New York, described these two among 6 as the curses.
Sisters.
He did that again
6
today.
sisters. He did it today.
And their curses. And you accept that?
He said 6 sisters. I don't know. He called it
Yes,
courses.
yes. He did refer, and he said it did cause a lot of controversy,
Yes.
but he maintained. And I don't think I understand the sentiment that is connected to it, but I think that he basically is saying it kind of maybe tied us down into one area, and we're not looking at other areas, and we need to diversify.
Well, which areas then? Which areas?
Well,
Now, let me put this to you.
Well,
There's an Investment Act,
yes,
and it says the government has a duty to identify the priority areas for investment. Has that been done in the 20 whatever months, 30 months almost?
Well, it may be in the new budget.
No, this is nothing to do with new budget.
Why?
This is not a budgetary measure. This is
Why it must
It's
go
a-
the
it's a
focus,
strategy, it's a
the
strategy.
focus for investment.
so you think it's going to be in the new budget?
Well, Chris, let me say this too.
No,
Tourism,
but-
for example, as an economic tool for development, both governments have failed the development of tourism in Ghana, and I'm not pleased with it. And the reason is because, for two things, we haven't spent the money on marketing Guyana to the world, so nobody knows about the beauty of Guyana. Very, very few people. And second of all, the institutional arrangements for our tourism authority that need the capacity, the regulations, we have been piecemealing that on both sides, and that is something need to be focused on.
Part of our problem is we're not willing to call a spade a spade. When we don't do what we have to do, we have so many ministers. The president himself travels extensively. Does he take anybody from the private sector? No. He takes political operatives. How do you? So those are the opportunities for the marketing. That's what you do it.
Our Minister of Foreign Affairs got a portfolio called economic diplomacy as well. And he was there today on the panel.
Yes.
I didn't get to listen to him, General, so maybe you might have. How did he address the economic diplomacy issue to creating jobs?
Well,
and
he was
business?
focusing on markets and
Yeah.
some of the impediments which are facing us, attracting some of the markets and what have you. And we had this lady, the Ambassador Mathurin,
Correct.
who
From where?
CARICOM, right?
I think she's in CARICOM.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very good too. And they spoke extensively on what are the impediments impacting on markets, on us being able to market the goods that we have and supply. So, that's very well.
But Major General, you know we're members of the WTO, and the WTO really has opened the markets and opportunities. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
what
but
are
there are a lot of challenges to the WTO.
I-
You know
I
that
know,
very well.
But management is about confronting and overcoming challenges.
Well, these were mentioned by the Vice President Greenwich
You talked
on
about
the issues of the WTO and some of the issues which facing our export of produce and some of the challenges which face that. So it is a challenge.
But the minister is telling us it's a challenge. What's the private sector saying about this challenge? What are the specific challenges and how do we overcome them? It's not for the foreign minister to tell us what the challenges are.
Well, he knows about it because he knows about the different procedures which have to be met and satisfied. If you want to export goods with phytosanitary restrictions and all the other issues that come up. So it's not as easy as we make it sound.
Those have
And
been around for
the
20
W-
years, Major.
No, no.
Well, and Chris is right. You know, like for example, agriculture. There's a big market in New York for fresh fruits and vegetables for Ghana.
Yes.
But to access that market, our farmers got to understand the difference between farming and the business of farming. And the business of farming required them to understand the issue of phytosanitary systems, the fertilizers, the insecticides, the pesticides, and how they package their produce and how they market it.
Even
Now,
the aviation security.
The Ministry of Agriculture got a role to do that to
Well,
help
the minister's
farmers.
meeting, he's
speaking
presenting tomorrow morning.
So the minister got a role to try to help farmers understand the business of farming. And for example, we can't ship, we could not ship. For 4 years, we flew Dynamic 767 out to Ghana empty because we didn't have the kind of scanners to scan cargo in the belly of a passenger plane.
Yeah.
So even if we wanted to do it, we couldn't do it because there was that limitation at the airport. And we heard day after day that it's going to be fixed, it's going to be fixed. It haven't been fixed up to now, I don't believe.
You raised the question of taxation, Major General, and that there are going to be no new taxes. Of course, there have been significant increases in taxes based on reports, etc. But the Minister of Finance made an interesting statement earlier this week that all he's been doing with the tax system is shuffling cards. Did you understand what he meant with that?
No,
Huh?
I don't
Never
know.
heard that one.
Yes, it's reported in the press. And I would have thought that's something that you would be seeking clarification on as well.
I didn't hear that one.
This is serious stuff. Yes, he
Or
said that.
didn't read it either.
So what would be your view? I mean, you can take it from me that was said.
I would probably want to. We would probably want to ask the
Context.
minister what was the context that
Yeah,
he made that
context
comment,
is
because
probably
But any context to describe one of your major fiscal instruments as playing cards or shuffling cards, that's almost as bad as saying the six curses, isn't it?
Well, you know, in oil, they was talking about the Six Sisters. You ever read that one?
Yes, Norman.
Yes,
You're trying
right.
hard, you know.
No,
Norman, you really remember, Joe.
no. So, you know, the products that we produce, the major products, I think the Minister, Vice President Greenwich spoke about that as well. He named 8, if I'm not mistaken. So 8 products which are vital to economy. So, you know.
So they're no longer courses, they're vital to the economy. Plus more. I hope tourism is one. Did he know that as one?
the tourism was mentioned here today. Yes. Tourism is
Yes.
an important one.
So that's 7. What's the other one?
Trying to remember.
I was in the room.
You know, I'm suffering from Alzheimer's now, not Alzheimer's, only half.
And I know it's not inconvenient. Now, I'm sure tomorrow is going to be just as interesting.
Well, you will be there.
No,
I
no,
hope
tomorrow,
you find the
yeah.
time to be there and sit with us tomorrow, Chris.
I am on a panel for 11 o'clock, and I'll be there at 11:15.
All right, okay.
You mean you're not going to be there for the rest of the day to give your opinion from the floor? And give your views from the floor? You know,
I find Guyana, private sector and public sector, spends so much of time talking. I saw some photographs today. You were talking almost empty chairs.
No.
No, that's
that's,
true.
that's late in the afternoon.
Late in the afternoon, yes.
That's late in the afternoon. No, but the morning was
Yeah,
pretty
but
full.
it's a full day.
And hear me, we went till nearly 2 o'clock. We didn't go to lunch until 2 o'clock. So it was a long morning. And after that, I believe you will have
But-
seen
but
some empty seats.
Your program was kind of efficiently and rigidly set out.
No,
What
no, no,
went
no,
wrong?
no.
I think we
It's-
started
we had
this
a
morning.
Guyana time and
Or-
you know Caribbean time.
Okay.
So we started a little late and that went on, and people had limitations on time which they didn't honor. So
But
it went on and on.
It was streamed, and I thought some of the presentations
Yes.
were really very good. I thought this guy who spoke on behalf of forestry
Yes.
Oh yes,
did
yes.
an excellent job. And
Well,
I hope
he was questioning Vice President Greenwich up to this afternoon late
Yeah.
now
for clarification.
But he did say that they vatted the wood
Yes, yes.
as a building material, which is a huge deterrent in terms of competitiveness with foreign.
Yes, yes.
Um,
That's
with
Mohinder
foreign
Chan.
product. Correct. And so those are some of the issues I would want to hear people respond to.
what kind of follow? What happens now? You said the president did not respond to the issues. He stuck to a prepared speech. Forget what anybody says. That's a good political move anyway.
Well,
What do you expect to happen with all these presentations that you've done?
Well, I think Indar has been
Indar is
pointing
the president of the
Of the Georgian
Georgian
Chamber
Chamber
out
of
Georgian
Commerce.
Chamber.
Very, very vibrant young man.
And he is ensuring that there will be follow-up on all the issues, so it not becomes just a talking shop and nothing follows. So we will be having our own meeting to discuss the presentations and what are the next steps.
Do you see this as coming too late for inclusion in the 2018 budget?
In October, I think that they're vital issues. I think the minister
Yes.
could very well address them. I think the minister would be wise to look at this. But in terms of the way forward, I believe this could actually fit into Minister Gaskin institutional arrangement that he's developing to connect the private sector with the public sector in terms of the communication and the decision making. So I believe that we could probably find decisions from here going into that system as well.
But can you say you both you were all there today? I don't know if you were there.
I wasn't there, unfortunately. Yeah.
Can you see issues? Can you identify some issues that arose today that you feel are urgent enough and important enough to be taken into account right away?
The issue with forestry. I think the issue with forestry was important one. The issue of tourism. Sean McGrath did an excellent presentation
yes, he
on
did,
tourism, and he addressed the issue that we keep talking about supporting tourism, but we're not doing the things that needs to be done to support it. And so I believe that and it's vital. People keep making the point that we keep focusing on oil, but we should not forget the other tenets of our economy. And so and there are many others, but those are two that stood out glaringly to me
You
today.
make the point about we keep focusing on oil. Who is the we that would be keeping focusing on oil?
Well, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of private sector talk about oil. There's a lot of government talk about oil, and even though we haven't started shifting our activities yet, but I think there's also a counterbalance where people are continuing to warn against 100% focus on oil alone. But today, the private sector summit focused on all the sectors, and tomorrow it will continue. Tomorrow they will continue on the issue of taxation. I'm chairing the one to do with governance, and so on. So I think it will be tomorrow. We'll probably round it up in a way that will make sense.
Are you worried that you talk about we concentrate, we just focus on oil? Isn't that the recipe and the definition of the oil course?
No,
Because oil is a finite and a non-renewable resource.
yes.
So, is there not a major danger of shifting our focus, as the president seems to have suggested?
Well, let's look at this situation. We have been doing fairly well economically. We are at least getting up to 3% GDP and what have you. And I don't see why we should let the fact that we have now found massive amounts of oil to deflect us from continuing that program of generating good economic growth in the economy, and let the oil be the gravy and the topping, and to arrive at a strong sovereign wealth fund which could set aside for bad times. You have money set aside for that.
I thought Minister Trotman actually also did a very good presentation today.
He did.
But more particularly, it was I think the issue that was discussed in terms of the collaboration between the government and the opposition. Like young Ramson just came back with that massive degree program he did, and Minister Trotman extended a hand of friendship to him and say, we will definitely use you and your expertise. And I think that was a good message that came off on the floor.
It was a very good statement of cooperation between the government and the opposition.
When you get on tomorrow, when you chair your panel, are you going to say it is an absolute imperative that the government releases these contracts that are signed in the name of the people?
I actually believe that so long as there's no reason for confidentiality, I believe the contract should be released.
There's none. There's
No,
absolutely
but if there's not, then the contract should be released.
There's none.
And if we are talking about good governance and transparency and accountability, I believe that this government must stand by its mandate and mantra of openness and transparency.
Let's go down to tonight's topic, and Captain Barclay will be very much part of this segment of the discussion. The domestic aviation security
And safety.
and safety. We have crashes, we've had deaths coming in some kind of succession. We've had the Civil Aviation Authority stepping in and saying, look, this thing can't continue. There are concerns that the Civil Aviation Authority may not have entirely operated within the scope of its legal mandate. What's the reality? Is that perception that is out there that domestic aviation is threatened by fatalities and safety issues?
It's an unfortunate perception because it's not true. There are no statistics to back it up.
What about the reality of these deaths and the accidents and
It is-
have come up with some
It is quite unfortunate that these incidents happened, and accidents happened within such quick succession.
Mm-hmm.
But statistics don't lie, and the statistics show that civil aviation today
Statistics
is
don't
much.
lie.
Statistics
No,
don't
not,
lie.
not the facts.
The facts
No,
don't lie.
the facts
The
don't
facts
lie.
don't
Damn
lie.
lies.
The facts don't.
That's statistics.
But they show that civil aviation today is much safer and a much more transformed industry than it was, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, we have 3 bands of 15 years each,
Right.
starting from 1970 to the
85.
present.
Mhm.
15 years up each. And what we have is 7 deaths in the first 15 years, 8 in the second, and 5 in the third.
Sorry, Chief, you got.
That's what I
no,
see
no.
here.
You had 6
Accidents.
accidents.
Mhm. Yeah.
6 accidents in the first 15 years. That's from 70 to 1985 with 23 deaths.
Careful with our statistics.
No, no,
eh?
With 23 deaths.
Right.
Right, and then in the second 15 years, from 1986 to 2001, you had 8 accidents
With 14.
with 14 deaths. And then from 2002 to 2017, you had 8 accidents. Sorry, you had 5
5 with
accidents
8.
with 8 deaths. 8
Right.
deaths. And so what you actually saw was, if you did
Well,
that
actually,
graph, you
5.
see that the deaths came down and the
5
crashes came down.
accidents.
At the same time, we had a massive expansion in the tourism industry,
7.
in the
I know you're
aviation
showing me.
industry. So you
This is what
saw,
you'll show me.
Oh,
So
hold
you
on,
saw-
Captain
so you saw
Major General seems
passengers.
to have some problems with these numbers.
No, the numbers are here, General. Right?
Right.
So this is
Well,
6.
no,
This is
let's
6.
hear the-
Yeah. So what
Go
you had, in fact, the statistics show very clearly that in the last 45 years, if you divide it into the 15-year period, that in the last 15 years, aviation safety is better than it was in the 30 preceding years before that.
Is this, let me
That's
ask
a
you
fact.
this.
And what is significant is the amount of passengers which you carried
Yes.
in the last 15, 6.5 million,
Correct.
as against 2.6 million in the
Preceding
the
15.
previous 15,
So again,
and 2.1.
those are verifiable statistics and
Yes.
data,
The crashes and the fatalities
but not the
are a
passengers.
fact. The passengers and the flights are all approximations based on, right. But the actual deaths, the crashes and the deaths are facts. Facts that are that were taken out of the civil aviation system, facts that can be verified by dates, by aircraft type, and so on. And so we had in the last 45 years, we had 19 fatal accidents
Mhm.
with 45 deaths. And what is interesting as we do these statistics is to find why was our planes having these accidents. And so 9 of those accidents were what we call flight into terrain. So it was pilots crashing into mountains. And the question is, how do we stop pilots crashing into mountains? Because if pilots crashing into mountains, it means that for an instant in time, the pilots are disoriented. Because the pilot don't see a mountain and crash into it. It means the pilots geographically are not where they're supposed to be. And one of the problems we have, of course, is when I came back 40 years ago, we had 7 navigation beacons all over Guyana. Those beacons are no longer there. So pilots are basically flying out there by looking at the ground, knowing the
But
mountains,
why?
knowing the trees, because we have never replaced the beacons.
Beacons.
And so pilots are out there flying like that. Now,
That's
luckily, the GPSs, the global positioning systems, came out. And today they're very advanced global position systems. I had recommended very strongly to the civil aviation, since we are showing out of 19 accidents, fatal accidents, 9 of them were crash into terrain. And 4 of those we never found. Right, so it's 9 plus 4 is 13. We never found those planes. If you had proper navigation systems, it is quite possible those planes would not have been lost. So we need to fix the navigation system.
Well, it's amazing that 30 or 40 years ago you would have had 7 beacons,
7 beacons. Yes.
and now you have none?
None.
That's correct.
Oh,
Right.
how could that be possible?
There's one ground-based navigation aid at Tamari Airport. That's it. So there's nothing.
But why
nothing that-
wouldn't you have fixed something which was there and being helpful and guiding your pilots in all these years?
Is this a question you might want to try to answer?
No, I can't answer it. I'd like to know for the people to answer it, the people in the...
Well, I have 2 questions. One, what's the significance of the 15-year-old? Is that just arbitrary? And if we were to have a different kind of frame, would it show the current period as
Well, if you
perhaps-
just took 45 years, if you just took the 45 years and you took the deaths that happen year, the graph will still come down. And if you took
Yeah.
the deaths, the graph will still come down. So it doesn't matter how you change it.
How do
No,
you
no.
massage it? In the first 15 years, we had
No, I'm saying
25 deaths.
Yes.
In the second 15, we had 14.
I understand that.
In the last 15 years, we had 8.
I think Chris is
So
questioning our the peers that we have chosen.
Yeah, because-
The framing.
but
because
however
it-
you change it,
Uh-huh.
it's
No,
not going to
that's
make
not,
that
that's not
difference.
true.
The framing-
If you were to take it over, say, 3 years or 5 years, it could very well have been different. Anyway,
No, but irrespective of the framing, it will not be different.
no, it must be if you take it with 3 years.
it
Anyway,
it
let's
will not be different.
These are
that's
fatal
not-
accidents
that's
because in the
not-
last 15 years, you only had 5 accidents with 8 deaths.
All right.
As against 6 and 14 and so on.
Okay. The question that this raises is the Civil Aviation Authority being alarmist and trying to paint
Why?
the well, if they have to stop
Why
you from
alarmist? Okay.
well, is it okay then?
Well-
Why stop anybody from operating?
no,
I
but-
think with the new dispensation of Egbert Fields is a highly trained aviator. He got a good team. I think they're really trying to put some order, and notwithstanding the fact that they were not here for a while, but I think if they look at the statistics, they will also find that aviation was actually the safety figures came down tremendously. But even as he stopped it, and I personally was not in agreement with him stopping it, but we did the manual, we did our procedures, and I'm, as an owner for the airline and as a pilot myself, now that I'm very pleased with it because I'm a lot more comfortable. So we will cooperate with the authority.
What has changed? No, what has changed? The absence of these instruments, the allowing them to fall into disuse,
Correct.
Yes.
to which you appear to have attributed some of the problems.
Correct.
Right.
Have those now been replaced?
No.
They haven't.
Well, so where is this new improvement?
But not only that, we also have another significant issue, the issue of weather. Pilots fly, we don't have a scientific aviation weather support system for the pilots. And so pilots will call Camarang, for example, and talk to a Pope Knuckle, who would look up and see what the weather look like and call and say it's clear. And that is a very, very untenable
Are you
thing to have.
seriously telling me that that's what guides
That's correct.
the
That is
decision
correct.
whether or not
That is true.
to have a flight?
That's correct.
That's
Then
true.
that can't be safe.
But we have a Doppler radar at Tamari.
Mm-hmm.
How much $700 million
I think $7 million loss, but it's not operational. It's,
So it's
you cannot get real time information from it. They are using
Norman is getting
the
them from his telephone.
they are using the weather information from the NASA satellites, which we all have access to. So it's issue of interpretation. We have now learned to interpret the weather way better than the guys at the Met Office. I believe if you check on my Facebook page, you'll find
But
where I call trying for weather for one area, and it's a normal story. They don't even know where the place is in the first place,
But
much
they're
as to
the-
give you any weather.
They're the regulators. This thing can't be subjective. What you, the operator, you, the pilot,
I agree with
do.
you.
That's not how airline safety should work.
But Chris, the issue with the weather, the patterns have been changing. You've seen what happened at Linden. You've seen what happened at Camarang, where you had these mini tornadoes that came and ripped down houses and ripped down
Cato,
trees.
bad settlement all over.
Pilots are reporting going out into that jungle and going into what looked like a normal sky and hitting turbulence that they've never done before. People are attempting to land at runways on clear
In
days.
clear
They
days,
can't
and
land
can't.
and have to turn back to Ogle.
Why is this on a clear day they can't land?
Because of
Because of the
turbulence.
winds.
Something is happening with the winds, and we don't have a scientific weather system to tell us what is happening. So it became the pilot's experience is what keep coming into play at all times. So we have to fix those things.
How do you fix them then? So you're saying, here is your problem. Apparently clear day, visibility great,
Yes.
10 feet almost, or just above.
10 miles.
Huh?
10 miles.
No. But if it's that clear, you can see it right.
Yes.
Right.
You can see I'm just there. Now, so you want to land, and as you're saying, the problem is there's some wind factor.
Correct.
Correct.
Then you need some equipment there.
That
Exactly.
tells you
Strip.
not to come because
That
the
tell you
wind
not.
are precisely.
That's correct.
And they're automated weather observation systems. They're not very expensive. They can be put at these runways that will have satellite connectivity that you can tap into the information. We need to fix that. We need to fix the issue of search and rescue, which is the issue we've been harping on over and over again. We have the capability to search, a limited capability to search, because we don't have things like forward-looking infrared. We don't use any technology. So, and then when we find we can't rescue, because we don't have the equipment to do so. We don't have proper heavy lift helicopters that have the power and the stability to operate in the mountainous areas. And that is another area that's a real burning issue that we've been talking about and not getting any job.
I made a mistake just now on the visibility distance. Yes, 10
10
miles.
miles,
precisely.
10 miles. Thank you. Now, do we have, what would it take? What kind of money we're talking about? Because, I mean, obviously you can't spend the entire budget to save one life. That's the cruel reality. What does it take to equip all our airships and our airports with the necessary equipment
I think the figure
to
is
bring it up
Mhm.
to speed at what would be considered international standard?
I think you can pick up a weather system for between $2,500 and $3,000 US. There are cheaper ones that are as low as $1,500
serious?
US that will go, yeah,
So what is keeping us back
operate
from
on
doing
solar with a solar.
it? What is
um,
keeping us back from doing it? Major General, what do you see as... I'm not going to leave you out of this discussion. I know you're
The
not...
global positioning systems, which Gerry is recommending that every aircraft going into the interland should have, is what they are recommending.
Yes.
And the pilots will be a lot more comfortable with where they are and be able to see around them and to see the terrain and what have you.
How much does that cost?
$2,000 US.
$1,500.
So that's the aircraft operators.
Yes.
Why
yeah.
don't they spend that money?
Well, we have spent that money. We have those.
Why
We
have
operate
those
in
problems?
our planes.
Why you have those?
It's
You have
just
some
the
problems.
support systems. They're incomplete. Like if you're flying in the U.S., you can have what's called XM weather downloaded to your GPS, and you can see the weather in real time. If the Doppler radar is made operational and uplinks that information, then we can have XM weather directly uploaded to our GPSs in our cockpit. We've gone as far to equip our aircraft with trackers, spot trackers, so that we can see where the aircraft is at any
Every
time.
2 minutes or something. Huh?
And now we have the new ADS-B system in our aircraft, which gives a hit 2 times per second. So it gives you real-time tracking information.
So the tower could see our
Could see
planes,
your
we can
planes.
see our planes all the time. Look, they've been work in progress, but I believe that the simple thing, for example, we are going into runways, not only is there no weather, on a weekend, for example, you have 10 planes going to Kitchener Falls, and there's no air traffic control service on the ground Kitchener, so you pilots are playing hit and miss with one another. You're going
So
into...
does the civil aviation
These are all the air
responsibilities,
traffic
is it?
control when you now with the massive increase in air transport, but more particularly is going into runways that have no management system. So you're going into short runways, you're going into runways which have no system for security. We don't know if an animal will run into the runway, if a person, a vehicle will run in the runway. So a lot of times these things continue to happen in a very ad hoc way. Now there's an aviation security
So is
safety
that
conference.
a risk?
It is a
It
risk.
is a
Those are
massive
risks.
risk.
Those are
So
risks.
should those be closed down until we fix them?
Well, we need to fix them.
Should we do that, we would starve the people in the interior.
So
It's
we,
an
we
unfortunate.
prepare to take...
It's an unfortunate thing that the people in the interior,
But,
particularly in the region 7 and 8, depend wholly and solely on aircraft to service them, and it's
Mr.
difficult.
We're talking a few thousand US dollars. So there's absolutely no reason why this should not be done.
It
That's not
requires
a-
the will. It simply requires the will.
No.
It's not $2,000 US.
Well,
You're talking
No, no,
about-
for the
No,
weather
for
system.
the weather
Which weather
systems.
system?
For the weather
system,
systems, yes.
system.
But for things like the airstrip
No, we
and,
are talking... Yeah.
and providing fencing and that type of information is necessary.
Would those pass muster on the international,
No.
by international standard? Yes or no?
Guyana is a signatory to the International Civil Aviation Organization Annex 70, which is the aviation security.
Yes.
And that annex says that every aerodrome shall have security.
So we don't have it. We're breaching...
We have signed it, and we don't do it. We don't have the security. We don't
But
have
you're
the
saying
management
we should-
systems.
You should saying that even though we don't have it, we can't enforce it. We should not enforce it.
It should be done. It should be done. It negates people running into airplanes, and there was an issue a few years ago where a lady was lost her life running out to aircraft. There's issues of crowd control. There's animals running across the runway.
But Chris, let me say this to you. at the private sector, we recognize that our government got limitations in terms of so we have been actually a lot of times bending backwards. We've been landing on runways that runways damage our planes. There's potholes in the runway that break our landing gears. We have been
but
working.
I want to see this, Captain Gouveia. I want to see this as a safety issue.
It is a safety issue.
Not an issue of property.
But let me take it further to tell you. Here, what happened with Guyana Aviation when Guyana Airways was alive. Guyana Airways supported the hinterland economy by subsidizing the flights. The cost of living in the hinterland was kept under control. When Guyana Airways stopped flying, and people had to all go to Ogle to the private operators to fly their rice and sugar.
Which includes...
Yeah. Everybody at Ogle. So the point is, these are flights now have to fly 2 hours into the jungle with bags of rice and sugar, and the cost of living went up tremendously. So the economy of the hinterland started to collapse because they could not be sustained, mining, forestry. The private sector started looking at this and came up with a very innovative plan to say, you know what, let us not let people bring the cargo to Ogle. Let us go to the base of the Pacoima Mountains and develop forward stations where we will truck by the road systems, the cargo there, and then take the planes and fly it onto the mountains, onto the Pacoima Mountains where the mining and the villages were. And that is how the economy of the hinterland developed, and the cost of living came down, and that is how the aviation industry expanded as well.
Well, let me.
So there was a big effort on both sides.
Let me interject at this point. Is that what has caused the media, sensationally or not, to say that, look, some of these domestic air operators do 20 shuttles, and a pilot is seriously impaired at some point in time?
Fatigued?
There's a fundamental difference. When I was a young pilot, we did 3 flights a day, and each flight was like maybe 2 hours or 3 hours.
Yeah.
What you're looking at now is 10-minute shuttles. So they're from at the base of at Malia, they fly up onto the Kaichur mountain for 10 minutes and come back. So what you're looking at is 10 flights for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What we were doing was 4 flights for 8 hours.
Yeah, but surely takeoff and landing poses greater stress. I'm a bookkeeper, not
No, but
no
we have-
about
no,
it.
but they're
Does
very-
that
but-
cause?
very strict.
Is there what
agree.
Very
we're hearing? What we're hearing is, look, if you were doing these longer flights, I mean, when you're cruising, it's probably fairly relaxed. You sit back and relax and enjoy the show and meal. That's what we hear on the aircraft. Now,
Not over the green curtain.
is there any maximum that pilots ought number of trips in terms of between takeoff and landing under your international standards?
Under the international standards, there are hour limitations, not sector limitations. And the hour limitations that we adhere to under the international regulations are a maximum of 8 hours flying time a day, 34 flying hours a week, 120 flying hours per month. I believe it's 350 in 90 days, and if you're, in our case, we're a non-scheduled airline, 1,400 hours a year.
So there is nothing that says
No.
local conditions, whether you're doing shuttle and
No.
No. In your 4 hours and your 8 hours, you could do as much as 50 shuttles. That there's
no
health
one.
issue,
It would
no
be
fatigue issue.
you would be unable to do 50 shuttles. But you know,
Well-
I'd want to speak to that particular issue.
if it's 10 minutes,
Right. I want
probably can.
Yeah, but there's ground time, there's fueling in between, there's turnaround
but
time,
you're
there's
saying there's no
offloading and
maximum,
loading.
you should be,
Right.
it should be left
So you can
open.
fly up to. Now we have put a limit of 7 hours and 30 minutes per day on shuttle.
Regardless of the number of
Regardless
shuttles.
of the number of shuttles. So that is situation because you're doing short legs.
Mhm.
And now we have put a limitation of every 3 hours, the pilots will rest for 1 hour to relax. We have always throughout the years we've inspected pilots' accommodation, and it's a very strictly controlled environment. And I want to say that over the years, in 2003, the government embarked on the aviation reform program, where they got, I think they got a loan from the IDB,
Yeah.
and so civil aviation has for many years been self-regulating itself, and is a very safe industry. One of the main reasons
But civil
self-regulating.
aviation has been regulating the operators, not itself.
No,
You're not
civil
talking the
aviation,
authority,
not the
you're talking
authority.
operators.
I'm talking the operators have been regulating ourselves for the main reason because of the conditions that we operate in. You're required to be. These are jungle flights. This is a different type of flying. This is not flying an airline across from country to country. So your flying skill, and because of the conditions you operate without the navigator and so on, you have to be up to scratch. So pilots generally will never become command pilots unless they're a certain caliber of person. The training standards are way, way higher than in a normal airline. And the pilots have to undergo a lot of scrutiny and a lot of supervised flying before they are released.
In terms of the pilot training, you have a lot of competition among pilot airline training schools. Who regulates those to make sure? You're saying they have this
Regulation authority.
great.
There's competition in business. There's no competition in curriculum, and no competition in level of the standard of training delivered. Because if the school delivers a substandard student and that student goes to the airline, that school will lose its name and people will not send anyone to the school because the student is substandard. It's a very, very discriminatory and exclusionary industry in terms of this kind of standards you have to achieve. In addition to that, the support systems are also very closely mandated. The store systems, all of the maintenance systems. So it's a very safe and very, very strictly regulated industry. And I would say Guyanese are in a very good position.
Major
No?
General Norman McLean, I noticed you excluded yourself from the latter part of these discussions.
Well,
you know your limitations, thank you. Captain Larry Barkley, Captain Gerry Gouveia, thank you so much for appearing in Plano. I want to wish you gentlemen well at your business summit tomorrow. We hope that we'll get some serious results, and this is not another talk shop to which we seem to be becoming so
No, we're not
Operators and
becoming
viewers,
that.
Thank you, and good night.